Morning, everyone. Lovely for you to join me for this introduction to meditation. So we'll just wait a couple of minutes just to see if anyone else would like to join. And there will be a point just sort of before we move into the meditation after I've been through a bit of theory where you can ask any questions. So I'm not sure which side it shows up for you, but there should be a little live chat bit there. I think you have to sort of be signed into a Gmail to be able to use it. So you might want to just do that quickly now if you think that you might want to participate in any chat. Lovely. Welcome to anyone that's just joined. I was just saying that there's going to be time for a little bit of chat and questions. So you might just want to sign in if you've got a Gmail so that you can use the live chat function. Lovely. Well, we'll make a start then. So I wanted to do this session really because I know a lot of people sometimes don't know where to start when they're thinking of starting meditation, or they might have tried it and come across some sort of very common normal obstacles that have sort of then put them off. So I'm hoping that we can kind of go through each of these, kind of unpick some theory and also some myths about meditation. So we'll just start actually before we begin the session just by settling ourselves. So just to kind of mark whatever we were doing before, just moving ourselves into the session. So just gently closing down your eyes. And just bringing your awareness to your natural breath. Just feeling the breath as it moves in and out of the body. Just grounding and settling yourself. And just taking a couple more natural breaths here. And then very gently opening your eyes. Lovely. So I have written tangents, and I've realised actually that some of these things sort of deserve and require a bit more space and explanation. So I'm actually going to do kind of a bit of a meditation series and unpick some of these things in a bit more detail. So I'll just mention as we go through the ones that I'm going to pull out in a bit more detail in case you're thinking, oh, that's interesting, but I don't quite understand, or I'd like to know a bit more about that. There's more to come. But having said that, they are kind of important things to mention just kind of in this introduction, just to help kind of set you up on your journey for meditation. So the first thing, and I'd say the most important and actually often one of the biggest barriers to practice that people have, is actually finding a comfortable posture. So a lot of people have this kind of vision of a yogi sitting in lotus and they think, I'm not flexible enough, I can't sit with my legs crossed, I can't meditate. And actually you really don't have to sit on the floor. You can sit in a chair, you can sit on the edge of the bed. It's just really important that your feet are grounded and that you can sit upright and follow the natural curve of the spine. So you don't want to slouch back in an armchair, but just make sure that you can sit in a kind of natural but upright posture. So the reason why lying down isn't really recommended for meditation is really just because it's very easy to fall asleep when you're lying down. So particularly if you're sort of meditating at the beginning of the day or in the evening, if you're already feeling quite tired and then you're kind of listening to a very soothing voice, what can happen is you can just drift off to sleep. And while this is lovely, it's not really helping us with our meditation practice. So that is one of the main reasons why kind of lying down isn't recommended. But having said that, if that is the only posture that you find comfortable, then just do it lying down. You know, really give yourself permission to be in whatever position feels good. And I have some days when my shoulders are particularly tight or my lower back's twinging when I choose to lie down, because it's the only way I can really get myself kind of grounded and comfortable. Because if you're not comfortable, You're going to start your meditation, and all of your awareness, your mind is just going to zoom in on that discomfort or that pain in the body. And it's just going to become sort of an endurance test of how long you can sit uncomfortably for, which is not very helpful and definitely not very relaxing. The other thing is actually yoga is the best thing to do, kind of increase your flexibility to make sitting in a seated posture more comfortable. One of the reasons that yoga was developed was actually in order to increase this flexibility for seated meditation. And when I started meditating, I couldn't even dream of sitting kind of cross-legged. And now I can sit quite comfortably for about half an hour before I have to move. So lots of hip openers, hamstring stretches, strength lengthening for the back throughout the yoga practices are really good for just making you a bit more comfortable. The other thing just to say about posture is just do move if you're uncomfortable. So if you feel that something's just not quite right, you're a couple of minutes in and you feel like you need to move, then just give yourself permission to do that. You can actually make it part of your meditation. So you can actually just choose to move very mindfully, very slowly and with full awareness. And therefore it's not actually interrupting your meditation practice. So number one, be comfortable. The next thing that is another quite common misconception about meditation is actually that we're trying to clear the mind of thoughts. And so what happens is people sit down and they very quickly notice that actually there's a constant stream of chatter that's going on up there. And they think, oh, I've got a very busy mind. I can't possibly do this. Meditation's not for me. I'm no good at it. And actually, we're not trying to stop the mind from thinking. The mind is a really beautiful problem-solving and analytical tool. And it's actually taken thousands of years to become as sharp as it is. So we're not trying to stop the mind from thinking. But what happens is because it's so good at problem solving, it thinks it needs to do everything in this way. And so it very, very quickly goes into overdrive. And before we know it, we can kind of get lost in a sea of thoughts. So what we're trying to do with meditation is actually just sit and start observing this activity that's going on. So just creating a little bit of space between ourselves and our thoughts so we're not quite so lost in them. Because what we realize quite quickly is that thoughts are very fluid. They're not as fixed as we often think they are. They rise up out of nowhere, they then dissolve and disappear, they come, they go, and they're not necessarily facts. So we give a lot of weight to our thoughts, but they're actually just a series of pictures and images and words that are kind of moving in a very fluid way. So it starts to create this little bit of space between our thoughts. But one of the other things that can become quite difficult when we start sitting with this and we start observing is we notice that predominantly all of this kind of chatter that's going up there is actually quite negative. So we have a lot of opinions, a lot of judgments, a lot of meanness, a lot of wishing things to be another way. And this can be quite a hard and uncomfortable thing to sit with. So people can find this very difficult, and it can be one of the reasons and one of the barriers for sort of practice. It's really important to understand that we're actually hardwired for negativity bias. And this is kind of a hangover in the kind of ancient evolution of our brain from when we were hunter-gatherers. And this was to help with our survival. So it was really essential that we were kind of tuning into the negative to stay safe. The problem is our mind hasn't evolved, but the world has really evolved. And we actually don't need to be tuning into the negative in this way anymore. It's actually very detrimental to our happiness and well-being. So this negativity bias, I'm going to talk a lot about in another section because it's really, really interesting. And the most amazing thing about it is that we can actually rewire our brain. So we can refire the neural pathways and actually train the brain to start tuning into the positive, which is a really, really beautiful and beneficial practice. But the reason that I'm mentioning it now is because when you know that this is hardwired and you start noticing the negativity of the thoughts, you can kind of soften a little bit and not give yourself a hard time for the fact that you've got all this kind of negativity going on. Because otherwise what can happen is you sit in meditation, you start observing these negative thoughts, and then you start judging yourself for having negative thoughts. And so you start piling more negative thoughts on top of the negative thoughts, and it just creates more kind of thinking and more negativity. So it's just important to be aware of that so that if, this is the first time you've really started looking at what's happening in your mind, that it's not kind of unexpected and not too uncomfortable. So if we think that the kind of most important concept of mindfulness meditation is awareness and where we're focusing and centering our awareness, I'd say kind of the second or equal most important thing is actually kindness and compassion. Because the thing is, we can be very, very unkind and mean to ourselves. And if we're not bringing a kind of gentleness and an openness and a curiosity to our practice, then we are just sort of piling more of this on top of each other. So really try and be gentle with yourself, compassionate with yourself, and try and hold what's happening in this kind of broad and kind, loving awareness. It's really important. So the next thing really that I think is important to consider is, if you have all of that in mind and you just thought, right, okay, I'm going to sit, shut my eyes and start observing what's happening in my mind, you'd notice very quickly that your mind just gets swept away into all manner of different things. So tempting, teasing thoughts will come to constantly pull your awareness away. And it's actually quite humorous to start noticing what comes up, because something that you might not have even thought about for months suddenly will be the most important thing that your mind has to say, because it's trying to kind of pull you away from your meditation practice. And I tend to think of the mind almost like a toddler that just wants your constant attention. So it's always trying to pull you. And that can help to bring a bit of softness and a gentleness, I think. So I always try to smile at my mind when it's pulled me away, bring my awareness back. But with all this kind of ease, that how easy it is for the mind to kind of flit about, we have to start by creating a focal point, or starting with a focal point for our awareness that we can essentially use as an anchor for our awareness throughout the practice. And the simplest and the most beautiful anchor that we can use is our breath. So you'll hear breath talked about a lot in mindful meditation. And the respiratory system is the only system within the body that we can actually take control of. And that's really incredible. And actually, it creates this beautiful link between the mind and the body, just simply by bringing our awareness to our breath. It's such a beautiful thing to do. And I read an amazing thing just yesterday in this book that I'm reading by Thich Nhat Hanh. He's a Vietnamese monk, and he has such a beautiful way of talking about mindfulness very simply. And in the rest of your body are singing the same song. I think there was just a bit of a connection issue there, so apologies if anyone missed that. Do let me know if you were just cut off there. Hopefully it's fine. So yeah, I think we're all back now. And I think that's just really beautifully articulates this amazing feeling that we get simply from bringing our awareness to our breath. It's incredibly soothing. It's incredibly calming for the body. So we use our breath as an anchor throughout our practice. So we bring our awareness fully to our breath. And then the mind will wander. It will get taken away by something. It might be that we can only follow one breath before the mind is swept away into a tempting, tantalizing thought. But what will happen is there'll suddenly be a punctuation of awareness, a little moment when you realize and you kind of wake up out of the trance and think, oh, I've been swept away into a thought. And then you simply just bring your awareness back to the breath. Maybe you can only follow one more breath. A sound comes from the outside, you get swept away by the sound. You notice, you bring your awareness back. And when you start, you might find that you get swept away for a full 5 minutes of a 10-minute meditation, and you think, oh, I've completely just got lost then in a whole stream of thought, particularly if it's kind of an emotionally charged thought or situation. But you just see when you notice and you bring yourself back. So another thing that happens when people start this practice is they think, oh, my mind is just constantly wandering. It's wandering and then I'm bringing it back. It's wandering and it's bringing back. I'm no good at this. But actually, these little moments of realizing, coming back, that is a little magic moment of awareness and mindfulness. So rather than seeing this as a failing, try and see this as a beautiful victory of the mindfulness that you're cultivating. And what you'll find the more you practice is that those moments of being able to stay with the breath and the length of time that you can stay with the breath very gently start to increase. And you start to notice a lot quicker when your mind has wandered. And then you can bring that outside of your meditation practice into your kind of everyday, daily life, which is another thing I will talk about in another session. So those are sort of the main key things I would say when you're kind of starting meditation that are really useful to consider and can just help you when some of these challenges come up. And I just want to ask now if anyone does have any questions about that, if anything was a bit confusing or you didn't understand it, or if you've actually got any experience from your own meditation practice, either of challenges that you faced or of really helpful things that you've come across, then please do feel free to write in the chat and we can have a discussion about it. And otherwise, we'll just move into the meditation practice. So I'll just wait just about half a minute just to see if there's anything that anyone wants to say. Okay, lovely. So we'll just move into a very simple breath meditation. So we'll be using our breath as an anchor throughout the practice, and we're simply just starting to notice what's happening in the mind and noticing the thoughts as they arise. So if you want to just make sure that you are in a very comfortable position, whether that's seated on a chair, on the floor as I am, or if it's the only comfortable place for you, then lying on the floor. And then just gently closing down your eyes. And we're going to just start by taking a few deep breaths just to settle the body. So just bringing your awareness to your breath and just making the breath as long and as smooth and as deep as you can. Really inhaling, exhaling fully. Really trying to breathe all the way down into the abdomen. Just grounding and settling yourself for this short meditation practice. And then very gently, just letting go of your long breathing. Just allowing your breath to return to its natural rhythm. And just noticing where you can feel the breath most strongly in the body. Maybe it's where it enters and leaves at the tip of the nose. Maybe it's the rise and fall at the chest or the abdomen. Just gently resting your awareness where you feel the breath most strongly in the body. And just gently resting your gaze on the space in front of your closed eyes. Feeling the breath moving in and out of the body. And when you notice that your mind has wandered, been taken away by a thought or a sound or a feeling in the body, just gently bring your awareness back to your breath. Gently smiling as you do so. Not worrying if you have to do this 100 times. Just continuing to bring your awareness back to the gentle flow of the breath moving through the body. Just seeing if there's any parts of the body that you can gently soften into the practice. Letting go of any tension in the face or the shoulders. Just allowing the soothing breath to soften all parts of your body. Inhaling and exhaling. Now, very gently, just bringing this short practice to a close. Just tuning your awareness to any noises around you. And whenever you're ready, just gently opening your eyes. So I hope that was a useful little practice there, just to illustrate some of these thoughts and ideas. And the other thing I just wanted to mention is it can be really helpful just to start very small. So rather than telling yourself, right, I've heard that 20 minutes is a really desired length of meditation, just start with 2 or 3 minutes. And you can do it any time throughout the day, just following your breath, even 1 minute. Because if you start small, you'll very quickly notice the deep benefits of doing these practices. And then it will kind of inspire you to do more and more. But if you start big, you feel uncomfortable, you find it difficult, it can be hard to sit with some of the things that come up, then it can just end up being a block sort of before you've even started. And it's also really important to remember that it's called a practice for a reason. And one of my teachers used to explain it in a way that I found really helpful. He was saying, imagine that the mind is like a muscle, and it's a muscle that you haven't sort of strengthened and trained in a very long time, so it's quite weak. And in the same way that you would strengthen a muscle, you would start quite small, and you would start every day slowly and gently building up 6 months and go, oh, great, I'm really strong, I feel really muscly and good, I can just stop now, I've kind of mastered it. And then stop doing the practices, stop doing the strengthening. It's a daily practice because it's something that needs to be kind of maintained and sustained. And if you stop, then in the same way that you would lose muscle strength, you kind of lose the strength that you've built up within the mind. So that can be quite a helpful thing just to consider. So thank you very much for joining me. Again, if anyone's kind of got any questions or any feedback on anything like the practice that we just did, anything that they want to share, then you're very welcome to do so. Otherwise, so I'm sort of going to do another session that specifically kind of looks at observing the thoughts in a bit more detail, meditation kind of specifically around that. I'm going to do another one on negativity bias and kind of how we can rewire the brain for positive, which can be really powerful. And then I'll probably also do a section on sort of moving meditation or other types of mindfulness meditation that you can do. Because I know for some people, particularly when they start, sitting kind of still for any length of time can be really, really challenging. So there are other kind of meditation practices that we can do that involve movement that can really kind of help to settle the mind so we don't feel kind of uncomfortable in that stillness and that silence. So thank you, everyone. If you have any kind of questions, if anything wasn't clear or if anything was confusing, then please let me know, and I'd be very happy to explain things in a bit more detail. But I hope that's given you a good little introduction. I hope you join me for the subsequent sessions. Thanks very much. Have a lovely day.